Hello everyone. So today we are going to discuss about random module in Python. First of all, let me make clear that when we want to use random numbers in Python, this random numbers is required in any programming language when you are creating something, an online scratch card system where randomly any number has to come, or to generate a captcha code, to generate OTP, or some games like Ludo where we are supposed to make any random numbers from 1 to 6, right? So today we are going to discuss about random module in detail. We'll discuss all the functions which are in class 12th computer science syllabus. So let's start our journey for random module in Python. So the first function that we are going to discuss today is randrange. Before explaining this randrange, let me discuss one thing, that you must have heard about the range functions, because this function we have used many times in loop for I in range, right? So randrange is the same way like range function work, but it generates a random number from the range. It generates a random number. Like if I give you an example here, if we write here for I in range, say 5, so what it will do? It will simply generate a number from 0 to 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 in sequence. It will not use 5, that means higher limit not included. The same way in randrange, higher limit is not included. For example, if you can see the code here, import random, that obviously we need to import the random module for using any functions which come under random module, and we can use that random.randrange 20. What does it mean? It means it generates any number, not in sequence, because it is not a range function, it is a randrange function. It generates any random number from 0 to 19. It can take any number, not 20. It will not include the higher limit. It will not include the higher limit. The above code will generate a number from 0 to 19, right? So by default, the lower limit of randrange function is 0, and randrange function always generate a number 1 less than the higher limit, means it will not include the higher limit. So let me have few questions. Write the code to generate a number less than 10. So obviously we'll just put a randrange 10. I'll just show you the example. I'll copy this code, that how it basically works. I'll paste it here and I'll just run this. You can see it is generating 2 here on the right side, again 2, 5, 5, 6. So you can see it always generating a random integers less than 10. So please remember two things for randrange. First of all, it always generate an integer. Second thing, it always generate a number less than the higher limit, right? So write the code to generate a random number from 7 to 17 including both. So when you want the including both, that means lower limit is by default already included, but to include the higher limit you just increase one number. That means you just give the range 7, 18, right? I've done. Next is write the code which always generates 0 number. So obviously here you will write 1 because the lower limit is 0 and 1 is not included because higher limit is not included. So this code will always generate 0. So these are the few practice questions for you that you can do. Solved practice questions which you can just read the content about the randrange and then you can do this question. Then it becomes very much clear to you that how we can use this randrange function, right? Random. Random function generates floating point number, random floating point number from 0 to 1. From 0 to 1. That means 0 is included but 1 is not included. Like I've given an example that how it will generate. If I'll show you the code for this, I'll just write here random and I'll execute the code, and you can see here it is always generating a number 0 and 1, right? So the difference between the rand range and the random is what? First difference is rand range generate an integer, random always generate a floating point number. Rand range takes maximum 2 arguments, no argument for random. There is no argument for random. So the next function is, there's again few questions that you can discuss, that you can study. Randint. Randint again is for the integers. By the name we can understand int. It is again for the integers. But here the upper limit is included. That means if you're writing 2, 20, it will generate any number between 2 and 20, including 2 as well as 20. In this, higher limit is also included. So that means rand range and rand int are similar. In what case? They both generate integers, but they are different. In what case? In rand range, higher limit is not included. In rand int, higher range is included, right? So that means when we are rating 20, 30, that means it will generate a random number from 20 to 30, including 20 as well as 30. Including 20 as well as 30. Now this is a very interesting question here. It's a solved question, but you can try on your own first. That you have to take the upper limit from the user and the higher limit from the user. And from that range, for example, the upper limit is say 100 and the lower limit is 10. So there are many even numbers fall in this. So you have to add any 5 random even numbers into a list. Any 5, right? So the questions are given in between so that you can practice these and you can be, master in these things. Because with content, question exposure is also required, what I believe. Now, uniform. Uniform and random. These are similar. Similar in what case? That both generate floating point random numbers. But they are different. In what case? Random won't take any argument and uniform takes maximum 2 arguments, lower limit as well as the higher limit. But in this, it won't include the lower as well as the higher limit, right? Now choice. So this function normally works for the list or the tuple, for the sequence, where you have to select any random element from the list. Like here, I'll just copy the code and I'll show it to you. Like here you can see a list which is having a 6 element, and whenever you are executing this code, it always generate like 40, 50, 60. So that means it randomly pick any element, right? If in place of this list, if this is a tuple, then still this work, see, it is working, right? So choice work for the sequence. Shuffle basically change the sequence of the elements in the list. Like for example, there is a list which is having 5 names, and when you put a shuffle function, you use the shuffle function. So I'll show you the. So when you run this, you can see it is coming in a different sequence. Now it is a different sequence and now different. So every time when you are executing this code, it's basically shuffle function shuffling the sequence of the elements, right? Now we'll come to the end. So before going for the question answer session, let me brief up all the functions. There are 4 functions which generates the random integers or floating point numbers. What are those? First is rand range and rand int. These are the 2 functions which generate integers. These are the 2 functions which takes 2 arguments, lower limit, higher limit. Randint generate an integer which include the lower as well as higher limit. Randrange generate an integer which includes lower but not higher limit, right? Another two functions, random, and there is another function, uniform, which generates floating point number. But difference is, random generates a number between 0 and 1. Uniform generates a number between a given range. Choice to select any random element from the sequence. Shuffle to change the sequence of the elements, right? So let me come to the assessment part. Dash module is to be imported to use randrange function. Definitely import. Dash and dash functions of random module returns floating point number. So you can do your fill in the blanks, true, false, and assess yourself that whether you have learned it or understand this properly or not. If won't, then read the content carefully and understand. And then you can go for your online assessment. There is a quiz for MCQ. This is a 10 marks. So you can click on the link and you can have a online quiz, right? So thank you.